Love's Labors Lost. Introduction. The main characters are introduced and the setting is established.
The sun was setting over the bustling city of Paris, casting a warm orange glow over the streets as they slowly emptied of people. Among the few remaining stragglers was a young woman named Juliette, who was making her way back to her apartment after a long day at the bookstore where she worked. She had always loved books, and the bookstore was her sanctuary, a place where she could escape into the pages of her favorite stories and forget about the world for a little while. As she walked, she couldn't help but feel a sense of longing in her heart. She had always dreamed of adventure and excitement, of traveling to far-off lands and experiencing all that life had to offer. But her reality was a far cry from her dreams. She was stuck in a dead-end job living in a small apartment, and with no real prospects for the future. As she reached her apartment building, she paused on the steps and looked up at the sky, a deep shade of blue now as the sun had set. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. Suddenly, she heard a commotion on the street and opened her eyes to see a group of young men on motorcycles racing down the street, laughing and shouting. One of them, a tall, dark-haired man named Romeo, caught her eye, and their gazes locked for a moment before he was gone, disappearing around the corner with his friends. Juliette's heart skipped a beat as she realized that this was the adventure and excitement she had been longing for. Little did she know that this chance encounter would change her life forever and lead her on a journey filled with love, adventure, and the unknown.
Chapter 1: First Encounter. The main characters meet for the first time and their initial attraction is established.
As the sun rose the next morning, Juliette felt a renewed sense of excitement and anticipation. She couldn't stop thinking about Romeo and the group of friends she had seen racing down the street the night before. She had always been drawn to danger and adventure, and something about Romeo and his friends had sparked a fire in her that she couldn't ignore. Determined to find out more, Juliette set out on her own adventure, wandering the streets of Paris in search of any sign of the mysterious young men. She walked through the bustling marketplaces, dodging vendors and weaving through crowds of people, her heart pounding with anticipation. As she turned a corner, she caught a glimpse of a familiar leather jacket, and her heart skipped a beat. It was Romeo, standing with his friends in front of a coffee shop, laughing and talking as if they didn't have a care in the world. Without hesitation, Juliette approached them, her heart racing as she tried to keep her composure. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw you guys last night on your motorcycles, and I couldn't help but feel drawn to the adventure and excitement that seemed to follow you." Romeo turned to her, his eyes bright with curiosity. "Adventure and excitement, huh?" he said, a grin spreading across his face. "Well, we can certainly show you a good time if that's what you're looking for." With that, Romeo and his friends welcomed Juliette into their group with open arms, introducing her to the wild and colorful world of motorcycle racing, daring stunts, and all-night parties. They took her on thrilling rides through the city, showing her hidden gems and secret spots that most tourists never got to see. Juliette felt alive like never before, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she had found a place where she truly belonged. She laughed and joked with Romeo and his friends, feeling as if she had known them all her life. As the sun began to set once again, Juliette found herself in the midst of an impromptu dance party, surrounded by the friends she had made in just one day. She swayed to the beat of the music, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin and the joy of being alive. And as she looked around at the smiling faces of her new friends, she knew that this was just the beginning of an adventure that would change her life forever. The days passed quickly as Juliette continued to explore the world of motorcycle racing with her new friends. They took her to competitions, introduced her to other riders, and showed her how to perform daring stunts on her own motorcycle. Juliette felt like she had found a new family, a group of people who understood her and accepted her for who she was. But as much as she enjoyed the wild rides and the late-night parties, she couldn't help but feel like something was missing. She longed for a deeper connection with Romeo, for a chance to get to know him beyond the surface, level banter and flirtation. One evening, as they sat on a rooftop overlooking the city, Juliette finally mustered up the courage to ask Romeo about his life outside of the motorcycle world. "So what do you do when you're not racing or partying?" she asked, taking a sip of her drink. Romeo smiled, a flicker of sadness in his eyes. "Not much, really," he said. "I used to have dreams and ambitions, but those got crushed a long time ago." Juliette felt a pang of sympathy for him. She knew what it was like to feel lost and aimless, to have dreams that seemed unattainable. What kind of dreams that seemed unattainable? What kind of draw him out? Romeo shrugged. I used to want to be a musician, he said. I played guitar and wrote songs, but then life happened, and I had to put that aside. Now it just feels like a distant memory. Juliette's heart ached for him. She knew what it was like to give up on something you loved, but she also knew that it was never too late to pursue your dreams. You should start playing again, she said, taking his hand. You're so talented, and I bet you could still make it if you tried. Romeo looked at her, his eyes softening. You really think so? He asked. Juliette nodded. I do, and I'll help you in any way I can. From that moment on, Juliette and Romeo became inseparable. They spent their days racing on their motorcycles, and their nights writing songs and practicing guitar. Juliette had never felt so alive, so connected to another person. She knew that Romeo was the missing piece in her life, the one she had been searching for all along. As the weeks went by, Juliette watched as Romeo began to find his passion again. His music filled their small apartment, and he played with a joy and abandon that she had never seen before. They performed together at local cafes, and their music began to attract a small but loyal following. But even as their love grew deeper, Juliette knew that there were still obstacles to overcome. Romeo's wild and reckless lifestyle was starting to catch up with him, and she feared that he was on a path of self-destruction. She tried to talk to him, to get him to slow down and take care of himself, but he was stubborn and refused to listen. One night, after a particularly wild party, Romeo stumbled into their apartment, barely able to stand. Juliette knew that she had to take action, to do whatever it took to help him get his life back on track. With a heavy heart, she packed her bags and left, hoping that her absence would be a wake-up call for Romeo. For weeks, Juliette traveled, visiting different cities and experiencing new adventures. But even as she explored the world around her, her heart ached for Romeo, and she knew that she had to return to. As Juliette made her way back to the city, she couldn't help but feel a sense of apprehension. She didn't know what to expect when she saw Romeo again, or if he would even want to see her. But she knew that she had to try, that she couldn't give up on him without a fight. When she arrived at their apartment, she found Romeo sitting on the floor, surrounded by empty bottles and cigarette butts. He looked up when he heard her come in, his eyes bloodshot and wary. Juliette, he said, his voice rough, I thought you were gone for good. Juliette knelt down beside him, taking his hand. I could never leave you for good, she said softly. I love you too much. Romeo looked at her, his eyes full of pain and regret. I know I've messed up, he said. I've been so stupid, so reckless, but I'm ready to change, to be better, for you. Juliette felt her heart swell with hope. She had never given up on him, and now it seemed that he was finally ready to make a change. I know you can do it, she said. I believe in you. Over the next few weeks, Romeo worked hard to turn his life around. He went to rehab, started practicing yoga, and began writing music again. Juliette was by his side every step of the way, offering encouragement and support. Together they wrote new songs, performed at local venues, and even started their own band. As they played music together on a rooftop one night, overlooking the city they loved, Juliette couldn't help but feel grateful for the adventure that had brought them together. She knew that their love had been tested, but they had come out on the other side stronger than ever. I love you, Romeo, she said, putting down her guitar and looking at him. Romeo smiled at her, his eyes full of tenderness. I love you too, Juliette, he said, and I always will. As they kissed, surrounded by the glow of the city lights, Juliette knew that their love story was just beginning. There would be more adventures, more challenges, and more opportunities to grow and learn together. But she was ready for it all, with Romeo by her side.
Chapter 2, Adventure Begins. The main characters embark on a journey together and their relationship develops.
As the sun began to rise, Juliette and Romeo sat on their rooftop, sipping coffee and enjoying the cool morning breeze. They had been up all night, writing new songs and planning their next gig. It was moments like these that made all the hard work worth it. Suddenly, a loud roar interrupted their peaceful moment. They turned to see a bright yellow convertible racing down the street below them, the driver honking his horn and waving wildly. Who is that? Juliette asked, shielding her eyes from the bright sun. Romeo squinted, trying to get a better look. I have no idea, he said, but he looks like he's up for some fun. Without another word, they raced down the stairs and out into the street, following the car as it careened around corners and through red lights. It was risky and dangerous, but Juliette couldn't help but feel a sense of exhilaration as they sped through the city. Finally, the car screeched to a halt in front of an abandoned warehouse. The driver jumped out, grinning from ear to ear. Hey, you guys, he called. "I'm Ace, and I've got a proposition for you." Juliette and Romeo exchanged a glance, unsure of what to expect, but they were always up for an adventure. "What kind of proposition?" Romeo asked, stepping forward. Ace grinned again. "I'm putting together a team for a street racing competition, and I need 2 more drivers. You guys are the best I've seen. What do you say?" Juliette and Romeo looked at each other, both feeling a sense of excitement. They had never done anything like this before, but the thought of racing through the city streets was too thrilling to resist. "We're in," Juliette said, smiling. "Excellent," Ace exclaimed. "We've got a lot of work to do, but I know we can win this thing." Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly to get their cars in top shape and to master the intricacies of street racing. It was a dangerous and exhilarating sport, full of twists and turns that required lightning-fast reflexes and nerves of steel. But Juliette and Romeo were up to the challenge. They spent countless hours practicing, pushing themselves to their limits and beyond. They worked with Ace and the other drivers, honing their skills and learning new strategies. Finally, the day of the race arrived. It was a hot, muggy afternoon, and the streets were packed with people cheering and shouting. Juliette felt her heart pounding in her chest as she revved her engine, waiting for the signal to start. As the flag dropped, she and Romeo rocketed forward, their cars roaring with power. They wove in and out of traffic, jostling for position with the other racers. It was a blur of noise and color, a wild and exhilarating ride. In the end, it was Juliette and Romeo who emerged victorious, crossing the finish line in a blaze of glory. They were cheered by the crowd, their names ringing out through the streets. As they celebrated that night, drinking and laughing with Ace and the other drivers, Juliette couldn't help but feel grateful for the unexpected adventure that had brought them here. It was a reminder that life was full of surprises, and that sometimes the most thrilling moments were the ones you least expected. As the night wore on, Juliette and Romeo found themselves sitting in a quiet corner of the bar, nursing their drinks and talking about their latest gig. They had played for a packed house, and the energy in the room had been electric. "Did you see that guy in the front row?" Romeo asked, grinning. "He was practically climbing over the barricade to get to us." Juliette laughed. "I saw him. He was really into it." They both fell into a comfortable silence, listening to the music playing in the background. It was a slow, mournful ballad full of longing and heartache. "I love this song," Juliette said, her voice soft. "It's so beautiful." Romeo nodded. "It is. It reminds me of you." Juliette turned to him, her eyes sparkling. "Me? Why?" Romeo took her hand, tracing circles on the back of it with his thumb. "Because you're beautiful, and you're full of longing and heartache sometimes. But you never give up, no matter how hard things get." Juliette felt a lump form in her throat. She knew that Romeo had been through so much in his life, and that he had fought hard to get where he was now. She was proud of him, and grateful to have him by her side. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means a lot to me." Romeo leaned in, his breath warm on her cheek. I love you, Juliette. I always will." Juliette felt her heart skip a beat. She had known for a long time that she loved Romeo, but hearing him say it out loud made it feel real in a way that nothing else had. "I love you too," she whispered. They leaned in for a kiss, their lips meeting in a soft, tender embrace. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated love, a moment that they both knew they would cherish forever. As they pulled away, they could hear the music in the background starting to pick up. It was a lively, upbeat tune, and they both knew what that meant. "Come on," Romeo said, standing up and pulling Juliette to her feet. "Let's dance." They made their way to the dance floor, their bodies swaying to the music. It was a carefree, joyful moment, full of laughter and love. As the night wore on, they danced until their feet ached, until the bar was empty and the music had died away. They left hand in hand, walking down the empty streets of the city, basking in the glow of their love. They didn't know what the future would hold, but they knew one thing for sure. As long as they had each other, they could face anything that came their way. As the night drew to a close, Juliette and Romeo made their way back to their apartment, exhausted but happy. They collapsed onto the couch, limbs intertwined, and talked about everything and nothing. They were both so comfortable with each other that it felt like they could talk about anything, even the things that scared them the most. As the first rays of dawn started to filter in through the window, they knew that it was time to get some rest. They held each other close, their bodies entwined, and drifted off to sleep, knowing that they would wake up to a new day filled with new adventures. The sun rose slowly, bathing the city in a warm, golden glow. Juliette and Romeo woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside their window, and they knew that it was going to be a good day. As they got dressed and made their way out into the world, they knew that they had each other's backs. They were a team, a force to be reckoned with, and nothing could stand in their way. The city was bustling with life, and they were ready to take it on. They walked down the street, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came their way. As they turned the corner, they saw a group of street musicians playing on the corner. They were young and full of energy, and they were playing a catchy, upbeat tune. Without thinking, Juliette and Romeo started to dance. It was a spontaneous, carefree moment, full of laughter and joy. They spun around and around, their bodies moving in perfect harmony with the music. As the song came to an end, they both knew that they had found something special. They had found love, adventure, and a life full of promise. They looked into each other's eyes, knowing that they would always be there for each other no matter what. And with that, they set off into the world, ready for whatever life had in store for them.
Chapter 3.
As the sun rose higher in the sky, Juliette and Romeo found themselves on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by lush green fields and towering mountains in the distance. They had decided to take a break from the hustle and bustle of city life and embark on a hike through the beautiful countryside. The fresh air filled their lungs, and the gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of wildflowers. They set off down the winding path, taking in the stunning views around them. The landscape was alive with color, from the bright blue sky to the rich green of the trees and the vibrant hues of the flowers. As they walked, they chatted about everything and nothing, their conversation flowing easily and comfortably. They talked about their hopes and dreams, their fears and insecurities, and everything in between. As they walked, they came across a small stream, glistening in the sunlight. They both stopped to admire the beauty of the babbling brook, the sound of the water soothing and calming. Without hesitation, they took off their shoes and socks and waded into the cool water. The sensation was invigorating, and they splashed and played like children, their laughter ringing out across the countryside. As they continued their hike, they came across an old abandoned cabin, hidden among the trees. The door creaked as they pushed it open, and they stepped inside to explore. The cabin was dusty and old, but full of character and charm. They could imagine what it might have been like to live there, surrounded by nature and all its wonders. As they sat inside, talking and laughing, they realized that this was what life was all about. It wasn't about money or possessions or status. It was about finding joy and beauty in the simple things, like a hike through the countryside or a spontaneous splash in a stream. As the sun began to set, they made their way back to the city, their hearts and souls refreshed and renewed. They knew that they would always have these moments, these memories to look back on and cherish. And they knew that, as long as they had each other, they could conquer anything that life threw their way. Juliette and Romeo returned to the city feeling refreshed and rejuvenated, ready for their next adventure. They had decided to explore a new neighborhood, one filled with winding streets, colorful buildings, and a bustling nightlife. As they walked down the cobblestone street, they were drawn to the sound of live music coming from a small bar. They pushed open the door and stepped inside, the warmth of the room enveloping them. The band was playing a lively tune, and the crowd was dancing and laughing. Juliette and Romeo joined in, their bodies moving in perfect harmony with the music. They felt alive, their spirits lifted by the energy of the room. As the night wore on, they met new people, tried new foods, and explored new places. They wandered through narrow alleys and hidden courtyards, marveling at the beauty of the city. As they made their way back to their apartment, tired but happy, they knew that they had experienced something special. They had lived life to the fullest, embracing the moment and savoring every experience. The next day, they decided to do something more low-key. They visited a museum, admiring the works of art and learning about the history of the city. They held hands and whispered to each other, their voices hushed in the quiet of the galleries. As they made their way back outside, they stumbled upon a street fair. The air was filled with the sweet scent of cotton candy and the sound of children's laughter. They rode the Ferris wheel, their arms wrapped around each other as they gazed out at the city from above. They won stuffed animals at the game booths, their laughter ringing out across the fairgrounds. As the night fell, they made their way back to their apartment, their hearts full of joy and happiness. They snuggled on the couch, watching the stars twinkle outside their window, knowing that they had found something special. Their love was an adventure, a journey filled with twists and turns, highs and lows, but they knew that they were in it together, and as long as they had each other, they could face anything that life threw their way. As Juliette and Romeo settled onto the couch, their bodies intertwined and their minds filled with happy memories, they knew that they had found something special. Their love had taken them on a journey from the bustling city to the peaceful countryside and everywhere in between. They had experienced the highs and lows of life, but they had done it together side by side. As they gazed out the window, the stars twinkling above, they knew that this was just the beginning. They had so much more to discover, so much more to experience. But for now, they were content to just be, to revel in the quiet moments and hold each other close. As they drifted off to sleep, their bodies relaxed and their minds at ease, they knew that they had found something rare and beautiful. They had found a love that would carry them through anything, a love that would stand the test of time. And as they dreamed, their minds filled with new adventures and new experiences, they knew that tomorrow was a new day, full of endless possibilities. They were ready to face it all, hand in hand, heart to heart. They were ready for anything because they had each other.
Chapter 4: Obstacles. The couple faces challenges and obstacles that test their love for each other.
The sun was shining brightly as Juliette and Romeo stepped out into the street, their minds buzzing with excitement. Today, they had planned to explore the outskirts of the city, where the bustling energy of the urban center gave way to quiet country roads and rolling hills. As they made their way through the winding streets, they marveled at the architecture of the buildings, the colors and textures blending together in a mesmerizing tapestry. They breathed in the fresh air, the sense of blooming flowers and freshly mowed grass, filling their lungs. As they rounded a bend in the road, they were greeted by a magnificent sight, a sprawling field of sunflowers, their bright yellow petals stretching toward the sky. They ran through the fields, their laughter echoing across the countryside. After a few hours of exploring, they stumbled upon a quaint little village, its streets lined with charming shops and bustling cafes. They stopped for a bite to eat, savoring the flavors of fresh-baked bread and locally sourced cheeses. As they made their way out of the village, they were drawn to a nearby forest, the rustling of leaves and the chirping of birds luring them deeper and deeper and deeper into the trees. They hiked for hours, the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees and the forest floor, alive with the hum of insects and the rustling of small animals. As the sun began to set, they found a clearing, the perfect spot to watch the sunset. They snuggled together, the colors of the sky melting together in a breathtaking display. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared over the horizon, they knew that they had experienced something special. They had seen the beauty of the world, its colors and textures blending together in a breathtaking tapestry. And as they made their way back to their apartment, their hearts full of joy and their minds filled with happy memories, they knew that they would never forget this day. They had experienced something rare and beautiful, a moment in time that would stay with them forever. As they settled back into their apartment, the events of the day replayed in their minds, each moment etched into their memories. Juliette couldn't help but smile as she thought about the field of sunflowers, their bright yellow petals reaching up to the sky like a cheerful army of soldiers. She could still feel the soft petals against her fingertips, the gentle swaying of the stems as they ran through the field. Romeo, on the other hand, was still lost in thought about the forest, the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees, the rustling of leaves and the hum of insects were still fresh in his mind. He could still hear the calls of the birds, the rustling of small animals darting across the forest floor. As they sat together on the couch, sipping cups of hot tea, they shared their favorite moments from the day. They laughed and joked, their minds buzzing with happiness and excitement. As the night wore on, they found themselves lost in conversation, discussing their dreams and aspirations, their fears and uncertainties. They talked about their hopes for the future, their plans to see the world and experience all that life had to offer. And as they talked, they realized that they were in this together, that their love was stronger than anything life could throw their way. As the clock struck midnight, they shared a tender kiss, their hearts bursting with love and happiness. They knew that they had found something special, something that would carry them through anything. As they settled into bed, their bodies entwined and their minds at peace, they knew that they were exactly where they were meant to be. They had each other, and that was all that mattered. And as they drifted off to sleep, their minds filled with happy memories and their hearts full of love, they knew that they had found a rare and beautiful thing. They had found a love that would stand the test of time, a love that would carry them through anything life had to offer. As Juliette and Romeo drifted off to sleep, the sound of their gentle breathing filling the room, they knew that they had found something special. They had experienced a day of adventure and discovery, a day that had brought them closer together and strengthened their bond. As they slept, their dreams were filled with the colors and textures of the day, the field of sunflowers and the forest alive with the sounds of nature. They dreamed of the future, of all the adventures that were still to come, of all the adventures that were still to come, of all the beauty that they had yet to discover. And as the sun rose the next morning, casting a warm glow across the room, they woke up to a new day, a new opportunity to experience all that life had to offer. As they got dressed and prepared for the day ahead, they knew that they would carry the memories of the day before with them always, that those memories would be a source of strength and inspiration in the days and years to come. And as they stepped out into the street, ready to face whatever challenges and adventures lay ahead, they did so with a sense of joy and excitement, their hearts filled with the colors and textures of the world, their minds alive with the possibilities of what was yet to come. For Juliette and Romeo, the adventure was only just beginning, and they knew that with each passing day, they would grow stronger and more in love, that their bond would only deepen with time. And so they set off on a new adventure, ready to see what the world had in store for them, ready to experience all the colors and textures that life had to offer, and ready to do it all together, as partners in love and in life.
Chapter 5. The Temptation. The main characters are tempted to pursue other options, but ultimately choose to stay true to each other.
Juliette and Romeo woke up early, their minds buzzing with excitement and anticipation for the day ahead. They had planned a day trip to a nearby town, one known for its vibrant markets and colorful architecture. As they packed their bags and stepped out into the street, the air was alive with the sounds of the city. Birds chirped in the trees, vendors shouted out their wares, and the distant rumble of traffic filled the air. They made their way through the busy streets, taking in the sights and sounds around them. The buildings were painted in bright colors, each one a work of art in its own right. The streets were lined with vendors selling all manner of goods, from fresh produce to handmade craft. As they walked, they came across a small cafe nestled in a quiet corner of the town. The scent of fresh coffee and baked goods filled the air, drawing them in. They ordered 2 cups of coffee and a tray of pastries, settling into a quiet corner of the cafe. As they sipped their coffee and nibbled on the pastries, they took in the sights and sounds around them. The cafe was a hub of activity, with locals and tourists alike bustling in and out. The walls were decorated with colorful paintings and photographs, adding to the already vibrant atmosphere. After finishing their coffee, they set out to explore the markets. They wandered through stalls filled with fresh produce, handmade crafts, and souvenirs. Juliette couldn't resist picking up a few brightly colored scarves, while Romeo found a small shop selling handmade instruments. They both marveled at the artistry and craftsmanship on display, appreciating the dedication and passion that went into each piece. As they made their way through the town, they came across a small park filled with flowers of every color imaginable. The air was thick with the scent of blooming roses and lilies. They sat on a bench, taking in the beauty around them. The park was alive with the sounds of nature, with birds chirping and bees buzzing. As they sat, lost in thought and surrounded by beauty, they knew that they had found something special. They had found a love that was alive with color and texture, a love that was stronger with each passing day. And as they made their way back to their apartment, their hands entwined and their hearts full, they knew that they had experienced a day of beauty and wonder, a day that would live on in their memories for years to come. As they arrived back at their apartment, the sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the city. They paused for a moment to take in the view, watching as the colors of the sky changed from pink to orange to red. With a smile, Juliette turned to Romeo and said, "Today was amazing. Thank you for taking me on this adventure." Romeo grinned back at her. "I'm just happy to spend time with you, exploring new places and experiencing new things." They spent the rest of the evening curled up on the couch, sipping on glasses of wine and reminiscing about the day's adventures. They talked about their favorite moments, the sights and sounds that had left the biggest impression on them. As the night wore on, they found themselves lost in conversation, talking about everything from their hopes and dreams to their favorite books and movies. They laughed and joked, enjoying each other's company more than anything else in the world. As the clock struck midnight, they both realized with a start that they had been talking for hours. They shared a quiet moment, looking into each other's eyes and smiling. In that moment, they both knew that they had found something special, something that went beyond words and actions. They had found a deep, abiding love that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. With a sense of peace and contentment, they curled up together in bed, holding each other close. They closed their eyes and drifted off to sleep, knowing that they had found something truly beautiful in each other. And as they slept, their dreams were filled with colors and textures, with memories of a day that had been filled with adventure and wonder, a day that had changed their lives forever. As the night grew darker and the city outside grew quiet, Romeo and Juliette drifted off to sleep, their bodies entwined and their hearts full. They had shared a day of adventure and discovery, and now they were ready to rest and recharge for whatever the next day would bring. In the peaceful stillness of the night, Romeo's mind drifted back to the ring he had purchased earlier that day. He thought of the way Juliette's face had lit up when he had presented it to her, the way her eyes had shone with joy and happiness. He knew that he wanted to spend the rest of his life making her smile like that, making her feel loved and cherished in every moment. And with that thought in his heart, he made a decision. The next morning, as they sat sipping coffee in their favorite cafe, Romeo took Juliette's hand in his and looked deeply into her eyes. "Juliette," he said, his voice full of emotion, "I have something I want to ask you." Juliette looked at him, a curious expression on her face. "What is it?" she asked, her heart beating a little faster. Romeo took a deep breath, his fingers fumbling slightly as he reached into his pocket. He pulled out the small velvet box, feeling a wave of nervous excitement wash over him. He opened the box to reveal the ring, sparkling in the sunlight. "Juliette," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "will you marry me?" Tears sprang to Juliette's eyes as she gazed down at the ring. She looked back up at Romeo, her heart full of love and happiness. "Yes," she whispered, throwing her arms around his neck. And with those simple words, their lives were forever changed. They spent the rest of the day in a haze of excitement and joy, planning their future together and dreaming of the life they would share. As they fell asleep that night, their hearts beating as one, they knew that they had found the greatest adventure of all, the adventure of love, and they were ready to take it on, hand in hand, for the rest of their lives.
Chapter 6, Triumph. The couple overcomes the obstacles and their love for each other is strengthened.
As the sun rose over the city, Romeo and Juliette were up early, eager to begin their day of adventure. They had decided to spend the day exploring the local markets, tasting new foods, and immersing themselves in the culture of the city they had come to love. They set off hand in hand, weaving their way through the bustling streets and taking in the sights and sounds of the city. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices and fragrant flowers, and the bright colors of the market stalls dazzled their eyes. Romeo led Juliette to a stall selling fresh fruits and vegetables, and they spent some time picking out ingredients for their dinner that night. As they browsed the stalls, they came across a group of street performers, their colorful costumes and lively music drawing a crowd. Juliette was drawn in by the energy of the performers and grabbed Romeo's hand, pulling him towards the front of the crowd. They watched in amazement as the performers juggled fire, danced on stilts, and spun plates on their fingertips. As the show came to a close, the performers made their way through the crowd, passing out flyers for their next performance. One of them caught Romeo's eye, a beautiful young woman with long, curly hair and a bright smile. "Excuse me, would you like to join us for our show tonight?" she asked, handing him a flyer. Romeo looked at Juliette, a twinkle in his eye. "What do you think, love?" he asked. Juliette grinned back at him. "I think it sounds like a wonderful idea," she said. They spent the rest of the day wandering the markets and exploring the city, stopping to sample local delicacies and try on colorful clothing. As the sun began to set, they made their way to the outdoor theater where the street performers had promised to put on a show. The atmosphere was electric as they took their seats, the stage bathed in colorful lights and the sound of music filling the air. As the performers took to the stage, Romeo and Juliette watched in awe, their hearts full of joy and wonder. And as the final act drew to a close, they looked at each other, their faces glowing with happiness. This was what life was all about, taking chances, exploring new places, and falling in love with every moment. Romeo and Juliette continued to explore the city, trying new foods and discovering hidden gems around every corner. They visited ancient cathedrals and museums, taking in the art and architecture that had stood the test of time. One day, they stumbled upon a small park on the edge of the city, its green grass and towering trees providing a welcome respite from the bustling streets. They found a quiet spot and lay down on a blanket, watching the clouds drift lazily across the sky. As they lay there, Romeo began to feel a strange sensation in his pocket. He reached in and pulled out his phone, surprised to see a message from his boss back home. His heart sank as he read the message. His project had hit a snag, and he was needed back in the office immediately. Juliette noticed the look of worry on his face and asked what was wrong. When he told her about the message, she looked at him sympathetically. "I know you have to go back, but we still have a few days left here," she said. "Let's make the most of the time we have left." Romeo smiled gratefully at her, and they spent the rest of the day enjoying each other's company, making memories that would last a lifetime. They watched the sunset over the city from a rooftop bar, sipping on cocktails and toasting to their adventures. The next morning, Romeo packed his bags and prepared to leave. Juliette walked with him to the train station, her hand in his as they said their goodbyes. "Thank you for everything," Romeo said, his voice choked with emotion. "I don't know how I could have made it through this project without you." Juliette smiled at him, her eyes shining. "You're welcome, but I think it was fate that brought us together," she said. "I have a feeling this is just the beginning of our adventures." Romeo nodded, his heart full of hope and excitement. He boarded the train and waved goodbye to Juliette, knowing that he would see her again soon. As the train pulled away from the station, Romeo felt a sense of gratitude and joy wash over him. He had found love in the most unexpected of places, and he knew that the adventures he had shared with Juliette would stay with him forever. As the sun set over the city, Romeo and Juliette found themselves at a small restaurant, enjoying a romantic dinner for two. The food was delicious, and the wine flowed freely as they talked and laughed, lost in each other's company. As they finished their meal, Romeo looked into Juliette's eyes and knew that he had found something special. "I know we've only known each other for a short time, but I feel like I've known you forever," he said, taking her hand in his. "I don't want this to end." Juliette smiled at him, her heart swelling with emotion. "I feel the same way," she said. "Let's make the most of the time we have together." They left the restaurant and wandered the streets of the city, hand in hand, taking in the sights and sounds of the bustling metropolis. They visited a lively nightclub, dancing the night away and forgetting about the world outside. As the night wore on, Romeo and Juliette found themselves walking along a quiet street, the moon casting a soft glow over everything. They stopped under a street lamp, their eyes locked, and Romeo leaned in to kiss her. Their lips met in a sweet and tender embrace, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. When they finally pulled away, they knew that they were meant to be together. They walked back to Juliette's apartment, talking and laughing the whole way. As they said goodnight, Romeo knew that he would see her again soon. He left with a sense of excitement and anticipation, eager to see what the future held. As he walked back to his hotel, he couldn't help but smile. He had found someone special in the most unexpected of places, and he knew that this was just the beginning of their adventure together.
Chapter 7, Love Confirmed. The couple confesses their love for each other and solidifies their relationship.
It was a bright and sunny morning as Romeo and Juliette woke up, ready for a new day of adventure. They decided to take a leisurely walk around the city, enjoying the cool breeze and the warm sun on their faces. As they strolled through the park, they came across a group of street performers, juggling and doing tricks for the gathered crowd. Romeo and Juliette stopped to watch, marveling at the performers' skill and daring. Suddenly, one of the performers called out to them, inviting them to come up and try their hand at juggling. Romeo and Juliette looked at each other, a little hesitant at first, but then decided to give it a try. They stepped up and began to juggle, the balls flying through the air as they tried to keep them in motion. At first, they were a little unsteady, but soon they found their rhythm, catching and throwing the balls with ease. The crowd cheered and clapped as they continued to juggle, each trying to outdo the other with their skills. Romeo even attempted a daring trick, tossing the balls high into the air and catching them behind his back. As they finished their performance, the crowd erupted into applause, and Romeo and Juliette took their bows, feeling exhilarated and alive. They left the park, feeling invigorated by the experience. As they continued their walk, they stumbled upon a quaint little cafe and decided to stop in for a cup of coffee. The cafe was cozy and inviting, with the scent of fresh brewed coffee wafting through the air. As they sat sipping their drinks, they struck up a conversation with the cafe's owner, a friendly and gregarious man with a twinkle in his eye. They talked about their travels and their adventures, and he regaled them with tales of his own experiences. They left the cafe, feeling grateful for the chance encounter and the newfound friendship. They continued their walk through the city, taking in the sights and sounds of the bustling streets. As the day wore on, they found themselves back at Juliette's apartment, exhausted but happy. They snuggled up on the couch, watching the sun set over the city, feeling grateful for each other and the adventures they shared. As night fell, Romeo and Juliette decided to go out and explore the city's nightlife. They wandered down dimly lit alleys, enjoying the street art and the sound of music coming from nearby bars. They eventually stumbled upon a small club that was hosting a local band. The club was packed, and the energy was electric. They squeezed their way to the front of the stage and began dancing to the music, feeling the beat pulse through their bodies. As the night wore on, the band began to wind down, and the club started to empty out. Romeo and Juliette found themselves standing outside, feeling the cool night air on their skin. As they turned to head back to Juliette's apartment, they heard a commotion in the distance. Curious, they followed the noise and found themselves in the middle of a protest. The protesters were marching through the streets, chanting and carrying signs in support of a social justice cause. Romeo and Juliette joined the march, feeling the passion and energy of the crowd as they made their way through the city. They felt a sense of unity with the other protesters, even though they had never met before. As the march ended, They found themselves in a quiet park, surrounded by trees and the sound of crickets chirping. They sat down on a bench, feeling a sense of peace and contentment wash over them. They talked about the day's events, feeling grateful for the experiences they had shared. They marveled at the diversity and beauty of the city and how they had connected with so many different people. As they sat in silence, they noticed a shooting star streaking across the sky. They closed their eyes and made a wish, feeling the warmth of each other's presence and the promise of new adventures to come. Romeo and Juliette watched as the shooting star disappeared into the night sky, feeling a sense of wonder and magic. They stood up, feeling the chill of the evening air, and wrapped their arms around each other. As they walked back to Juliette's apartment, they talked about all the adventures they had experienced in the city so far. They couldn't believe how much they had seen and how many amazing people they had met. When they arrived at Juliette's apartment, they collapsed onto the couch, exhausted but exhilarated from the day's events. They talked about what they wanted to do next, feeling an exciting sense of possibility and freedom. They decided to spend the rest of the night planning their next adventure, looking up different neighborhoods to explore and exciting events happening around the city. They laughed and joked as they searched for ideas, feeling the excitement of possibility and the joy of new experiences. As the night wore on, they both started to feel sleepy, and Romeo decided to head back to his own apartment. He hugged Juliette tightly, feeling a deep sense of connection and appreciation for everything she had brought into his life. He walked home feeling the cool night air on his skin, feeling a sense of contentment and fulfillment. He knew that the adventure was just beginning, and he couldn't wait to see where it would take him next.
Chapter 8. The Twist. A surprising revelation shakes the foundation of the couple's relationship.
It had been a few weeks since Romeo and Juliette's last adventure, and they were both feeling restless. They decided it was time to plan something new and exciting, something that would take them outside of the city and into the great outdoors. They settled on a weekend camping trip and soon found themselves driving through winding roads and lush forests, the scent of pine filling the air. They arrived at the campsite just as the sun was setting and quickly set up their tent. As they sat around the campfire, toasting marshmallows and telling ghost stories, they felt a sense of camaraderie and togetherness. They were alone in the wilderness, surrounded by nature, but they felt more connected than ever. The next morning, they set out on a hike through the forest, marveling at the beauty of the trees and the sound of the rushing river nearby. They climbed to the top of a mountain, the sun beating down on their faces, and looked out at the breathtaking view. As they descended the mountain, they stumbled upon a hidden waterfall, the water cascading down the rocks in a sparkling spray. They couldn't resist the temptation to cool off in the water and soon found themselves laughing and splashing in the refreshing pool below. Later that day, they went fishing in the river, catching several trout that they cooked up for dinner. As they sat around the campfire, feasting on their fresh catch, they talked about how good it felt to be disconnected from the hustle and bustle of city life. The night sky was filled with stars, and they spent hours lying on their backs, pointing out constellations and telling stories. It was peaceful and quiet, and they both felt a sense of gratitude for the beauty of the world around them. The next day, they packed up their campsite and drove back to the city, feeling rejuvenated and alive. They had experienced a new kind of adventure, one that had brought them closer together and reminded them of the magic of the natural world. As they said goodbye, promising to plan their next adventure soon, they both felt a sense of excitement and anticipation. They knew that there were endless possibilities for adventure and discovery, and they couldn't wait to see where their journey would take them next. As Romeo and Juliette drove back to the city, they talked excitedly about their next adventure. They both loved the feeling of being surrounded by nature and were eager to plan another outdoor excursion. A few days later, Juliette called Romeo with an idea. She had read about a nearby hot springs that was surrounded by beautiful hiking trails, and she thought it would be the perfect destination for their next adventure. Romeo was thrilled with the idea, and they quickly made plans to set out on their next adventure. They packed their bags and set out on the drive to the hot springs. As they arrived at the hot springs, they were struck by the natural beauty surrounding them. The hot springs were nestled in a valley surrounded by towering mountains and lush greenery. They couldn't wait to explore the surrounding area. After settling into their cozy cabin, they set out on a hike. The trail wound through the forest and up a steep incline. As they climbed, they were surrounded by the sounds of birds chirping and the scent of pine in the air. As they reached the summit of the trail, they were rewarded with a breathtaking view of the valley below. They could see the hot springs in the distance, surrounded by towering mountains and verdant forests. After a long day of hiking, they headed back to their cabin and soaked in the natural hot springs. The warm water soothed their muscles, and they felt a sense of relaxation they hadn't experienced in a long time. As the sun set, they sat outside their cabin, watching as the stars filled the sky. They felt a sense of peace and contentment, grateful for the opportunity to connect with nature in such a profound way. The next day, they set out on a new hiking trail, following a winding path that led them to a secluded waterfall. They sat in silence, watching as the water cascaded down the rocks, the mist tickling their skin. As they headed back to the cabin, they felt a sense of satisfaction and joy. They had discovered new places and experiences, and they felt more connected than ever to each other and the natural world. As they packed up their bags and headed back to the city, they both felt a sense of sadness. They didn't want the adventure to end, but they knew that there were many more experiences waiting for them in the future. As they said their goodbyes, they made a promise to continue exploring the world together, to seek out new experiences, and to always stay connected to the natural beauty around them. They knew that their love for each other and for adventure would continue to guide them on their journey through life. As the sun began to set over the horizon, the group of adventurers sat around the fire, exhausted but exhilarated from their journey through the treacherous jungle. They had battled fierce creatures, braved raging rivers, and overcome obstacles that would have halted most travelers in their tracks. But despite the challenges they faced, the group had grown closer and more determined to reach their goal. As they enjoyed a hot meal and shared stories of their adventures, they knew that the next leg of their journey would be even more difficult, but they were ready for whatever lay ahead. As they settled in for the night, they felt a sense of pride and accomplishment for all they had achieved. And though they knew there was still a long way to go, they were excited for the challenges that awaited them on their quest to uncover the secrets of the ancient ruins.
Chapter 9. The Reckoning. The couple must confront and resolve the issues brought about by the twist.
The sun was rising over the horizon, casting a warm glow over the majestic mountains that lay before the group of adventurers. They had traveled for days, pushing themselves to the limit as they climbed ever higher, driven by the promise of adventure and discovery. As they approached the foot of the mountain, they could feel the thrill of excitement building inside them. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. With their hearts pounding and their spirits soaring, they set out on the arduous climb up the steep, rocky terrain. With every step, the group was tested. The air grew thin, and the climb became steeper and more treacherous. But they pressed on, their determination unwavering. As they ascended higher and higher, the views became more breathtaking, with snow-capped peaks stretching out as far as the eye could see. And though their legs ached and their lungs burned, they knew that this was a journey they would never forget. At long last, they reached the summit, greeted by the sight of a vast, glittering expanse that seemed to stretch out to infinity. The group stood in awe, humbled by the raw power and beauty of the landscape before them. For a moment, they simply stood in silence, taking in the majesty of their surroundings. And then, as one, they let out a cheer that echoed across the mountaintop, celebrating their hard-earned victory and the unbreakable bond that had formed between them on their journey. As the adventurers took in the breathtaking views from the mountaintop, they felt a deep sense of accomplishment and camaraderie. For months, they had planned and prepared for this moment, pushing themselves to their limits in order to reach this lofty peak. They set up camp, pitching their tents and starting a fire to warm themselves against the chill of the mountain air. As they ate and drank together, they shared stories of their lives, their dreams, and their hopes for the future. As night fell, the sky was illuminated with 1,000,000 stars, a sight so awe-inspiring that the adventurers could not help but feel a sense of reverence for the universe and their place within it. The next day, they set out on a trek down the mountain, descending through rocky outcroppings and verdant meadows. Along the way, they encountered all manner of wildlife, from graceful mountain goats to playful marmots, and felt a sense of kinship with the natural world. At one point, they came across a glistening river, the cool, crystal-clear water beckoning them to take a dip. Without hesitation, they stripped down and splashed into the water, laughing and joking as they swam together. As they continued their journey, the adventurers encountered all manner of challenges, from steep cliffs to treacherous ravines. But each time they worked together, relying on each other's strength and resilience to overcome any obstacle in their path. At last, they reached the end of their journey, their bodies aching but their spirits soaring. They looked back at the mountain they had conquered and felt a sense of awe and wonder at the sheer scale of the accomplishment. But more than that, they felt a deep sense of gratitude and love for each other, bound together by the experiences they had shared and the trials they had overcome. As they parted ways, the adventurers knew that they would always carry this journey with them, a testament to the power of perseverance, friendship, and the boundless beauty of the natural world. After their incredible journey through the mountains, the adventurers returned to the city, but they did not return as the same people who had set out on their quest so many months before. They were transformed, both individually and as a group, by the experiences they had shared. They had become a tight-knit community, a family of sorts, bonded by the challenges they had overcome and the moments of joy they had shared. And though they had parted ways, each adventurer carried a piece of that community with them wherever they went. Some returned to their regular lives, but they did so with a new sense of purpose and determination, driven by the memory of their journey and the realization that they could accomplish anything they set their minds to. Others continued on their journeys, exploring new horizons and pushing themselves even further. But they did so with a newfound appreciation for the world around them, the people they met, and the incredible power of human connection. As the years passed, the adventurers moved on with their lives, but they remained connected in ways that were both subtle and profound. They would meet up from time to time, sharing stories and memories, and always feeling that sense of camaraderie that had grown so strong on their journey. And though they all went their separate ways, each adventurer knew that they would always be a part of that community, that family, bound together by the shared experiences that had shaped their lives. In the end, their journey had not just been a physical one, but a spiritual and emotional one as well. It had taught them the importance of perseverance, the beauty of the natural world, and the incredible power of human connection. As they looked back on their adventure, they knew that they had been changed forever, and that they would always carry a piece of that journey with them, wherever life took them. As the group of adventurers approached the end of their journey, they felt a mix of emotions. Part of them was excited to finally see their goal come to fruition, while another part of them was sad to see this incredible adventure come to an end. They had come so far, both physically and emotionally, and had faced so many challenges along the way, but they had persevered, pushing through when it seemed impossible and always supporting one another when times were tough. And now, as they gazed out at the incredible vista before them, they knew that they had achieved something truly remarkable. They had proven to themselves and each other that they were capable of anything they set their minds to, and that they could accomplish incredible feats when they worked together. As they stood there, gazing out at the world below them, they knew that this was a moment they would never forget. They had come so far and had learned so much about themselves, about each other, and about the world around them. And as they turned to make their descent back down the mountain, they did so with a sense of pride and accomplishment that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. They knew that this journey had changed them in ways both big and small, and that they would carry the lessons they had learned with them wherever they went. As they began their descent, they walked with a new sense of purpose, knowing that they had achieved something truly special and that they had done it together. They would always remember this incredible journey and the sense of camaraderie and connection that had grown between them as they made their way through the mountains. And though their journey had come to an end, they knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, one filled with limitless possibilities and boundless potential. And they would face it all with the same determination, courage, and spirit that had brought them to this incredible moment on the mountaintop.
Chapter 10. The Conclusion. The couple's love is tested and ultimately endures, leading to a happy ending.
Unleashing the power within. Sarah woke up feeling different. She felt like she was on top of the world, like nothing could bring her down. It was as if a switch had been flipped in her brain, and all her doubts and fears were replaced with pure confidence and determination. She got out of bed and started stretching, feeling her body loosen up as she prepared for the day ahead. Today was the day she would unleash the power within her, the power that had been lying dormant for far too long. With a grin on her face and a spring in her step, Sarah set out to tackle the day. She had a long list of tasks to complete, but she knew that nothing could stop her now. She started with her morning workout, pushing herself harder than ever before. Her body felt strong and capable, and she relished in the feeling of her muscles working together in perfect harmony. After her workout, Sarah tackled her work with renewed vigor. She powered through her emails and completed all her projects with ease, surprising even herself with her newfound efficiency. At lunchtime, Sarah met up with some friends and caught up on the latest gossip. She laughed and joked with them, enjoying the moment and feeling grateful for their support. In the afternoon, Sarah faced a challenge that had previously seemed insurmountable, but today, she tackled it head-on with a calm confidence that surprised even her. She found that the answers she had been searching for came to her naturally, and she was able to solve the problem with ease. As the day drew to a close, Sarah felt a sense of satisfaction and accomplishment that she had never experienced before. She had unleashed the power within her, and it had made all the difference. With a smile on her face and a sense of pride in her heart, Sarah went to bed that night, knowing that she could accomplish anything she set her mind to. The power within her was now a force to be reckoned with, and she was excited to see where it would take her next. In the morning, The sun rose with a burst of colors that painted the sky in pinks, oranges, and yellows. The group got up early to start their journey, and as they walked, they marveled at the beauty of the forest around them. They made good progress and were almost at their destination when they heard a loud roar coming from up ahead. As they cautiously approached the source of the noise, they saw a massive grizzly bear. It was standing on its hind legs, towering over them, its sharp claws glinting in the sunlight. The group froze in terror, unsure of what to do next. But then, Sarah spoke up, her voice shaking but determined. "We can't let this bear stop us from getting to our destination. We need to work together and come up with a plan." The group nodded in agreement, and they quickly huddled together to come up with a plan. They knew they needed to distract the bear so they could sneak past it. John suggested throwing some food in a different direction to lead the bear away, and Mary had the idea of using a loud noise to startle it. Finally, Tom suggested trying to sneak past the bear while it was distracted by the noise and food. They put their plan into action, and it worked. The bear chased after the food while they snuck past, keeping as quiet as possible. They could hear the bear roaring in the distance, but they didn't stop to look back. They were too focused on reaching their destination. As they walked, they all felt a sense of pride and camaraderie. They had faced a huge challenge and worked together to overcome it. It was a feeling that would stay with them for a long time. When they finally arrived at their destination, they were amazed by what they saw. The place was even more beautiful than they could have imagined. They sat down to rest and take in the scenery, feeling grateful for the journey they had taken together. As the sun started to set, they realized it was time to head back. They packed up their things and started their journey home. They knew they would face challenges on the way back, but they were confident that they could face anything together. The journey back was long and tiring, but they made it. When they finally arrived back in their hometown, they were tired but happy. They had accomplished what they had set out to do, and they had done it together. They knew that they had formed a bond that would last a lifetime. As the sun began to set on the horizon, the group of friends gathered around the campfire, tired but satisfied from their day of adventure. They laughed and shared stories, reminiscing about their journey and the obstacles they had overcome together. As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled above, they all knew that they had formed an unbreakable bond. They had faced challenges and danger, but through it all, they had stuck together and supported each other. As they settled into their sleeping bags, the group felt a sense of contentment wash over them. They knew that their journey was not yet over, but they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that they had each other to rely on. With the sound of the crackling fire still echoing in their ears and the warmth of the flames still lingering on their skin, they closed their eyes and drifted off to sleep, eagerly anticipating the adventures that awaited them on the next leg of their journey.
The end.
Synopsis.
In a world of magic and mystery, a group of friends set out on a quest to find a legendary treasure that is said to grant immense power to its possessor. The group consists of 6 members, each with their own unique abilities and personalities. Arya, a fierce warrior with a heart of gold. Kyle, a skilled archer and rogue. Lily, a powerful mage with a troubled past. Luca, a gentle giant with incredible strength. Finn, a witty and cunning thief. And Alina, a healer with a mysterious connection to the treasure they seek. Their journey is not an easy one, as they face many obstacles and dangers along the way. They must navigate treacherous forests, evade deadly traps, battle fierce monsters, and confront their own personal demons. As they journey deeper into the unknown, they begin to uncover secrets about themselves and the true nature of the treasure they seek. Throughout their adventure, the group grows closer and forms unbreakable bonds of friendship. They learn to rely on each other and use their unique skills to overcome challenges. However, as they draw closer to the treasure, they realize that there are others who also seek its power and will stop at nothing to obtain it. In a final showdown, the group must face their greatest challenge yet, as they fight to protect the treasure from falling into the wrong hands. With the fate of the world hanging in the balance, they must use all of their skills and courage to emerge victorious.
Preview of the sequel. In the sequel, our group of adventurers will face a new challenge as they are tasked with finding the lost city of the gods. Legend has it that the city holds untold treasures and magical artifacts that could shift the balance of power in the world. However, the journey to the lost city is perilous, and they must face ancient traps and powerful guardians to reach their goal. As they explore the lost city, the group will uncover secrets about the gods and the origins of magic itself. They will also encounter a new enemy, one who seeks to use the power of the lost city to further their own dark agenda. With the fate of the world once again at stake, the group must work together to stop this new threat and protect the lost city from falling into the wrong hands. The sequel will continue to delve into the characters' backstories, revealing new insights into their motivations and personal struggles. We will see the group grow and evolve as they face new challenges and witness the bonds of their friendship strengthen even further. It will be a thrilling and epic adventure that will keep readers on the edge of their seats until the very end.
To be continued, the author invites you. We wish you a pleasant reading.